Extreme sports has changed our aesthetics because they slap cameras all over the place and we really know that they are jumping out of a plane or parachuting or whatever it is they're doing. And often, once you've done it 5 or 6 times, a performer has to start dredging up emotions from a new place, which is harder to do. Experimentation is a big part of how you find the best of the best. I've worked in male romance movies quite a bit. In fact, I think many years ago, I did a movie called Men with Guns, which was very much in this bromance space. I've done a number of them. What is Captain America's relevance? Is there a Captain America that makes any sense anymore? All of those questions I thought were very topically important to not just discuss, but to go on a real exploration in a deep dive sort of way. Seeing a new face every couple of weeks is unsettling if you're trying to discover a character and actualize it. In the past, if you were too vocal, it was considered a negative. Now it's encouraged. In LA, there's a considerably different climate. It's more misogynistic, frankly. I don't really differentiate between screens so much anymore. I think I probably have a fairly signature style. I tend to have a certain aesthetic, although I try to shake that up, honestly. If a Canadian novel hasn't been a box office success, say, The Republic of Love, then producers are reluctant to try again. I typically come into any project knowing what the opening shot is and what the end shot is. The Marvel characters are all very, very rich. When you have violence, there's victims, which entertainment tends not to explore that as much. They just take on great stories and they tell great stories. That's their only objective, at least that's been my experience. So as a result, we were encouraged to push the envelope and not hold back. I hugely respect Marvel for that position. Obviously, with any creative project, you never know how it's going to land. We don't necessarily ever dig into consequences, right? We have the violent act, and then cinematically, we tend to walk away, and we forget that there's collateral damage. You never create a scene around the Easter egg. The Easter egg is always just, oh, there's an opportunity for something that the fans will enjoy if they can spot it. Refugees, imperialism, all the things that we are facing right now. What are we going to do with that? What's the moral imperative? Where do we sit with all that as a worldwide community? The world went tilted in a lovely way suddenly. Television was no longer television. It was like, oh my God, this is the new world. I got to work with horses and cannons and fight sequences and castles. I studied a lot of extreme sports videos, like where they put the cameras. With the light cameras now, with the GoPro versions of it, you can put them anywhere. On Handmaids, you are given complete freedom, unlike some shows where you're really expected just to fold in and deliver the script and put the camera where we normally put the camera. I tend to use a lot of movement in both camera and characters, and I also tend to give characters a lot to physically do. My husband is an editor, and in fact he was the first person who hired me as an assistant editor. Then we fell in love and the rest was history. I have very eclectic tastes. Hard to say an absolute favorite, but some of my favorites are Ryan's Daughter, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, The Piano, Lena Wertmüller's Swept Away, Blade Runner. Men with Guns, the producer's cut, did not have the artistic and intellectual merit I hoped for, although I am still very proud of the work. I look at a lot of shows. I look at a really broad spectrum. I look at everything from David Lean to Lena Wertmüller. I look at a really unique and very arty spectrum. I think what I'd love to see. I love muscular projects. I love the world of. I've worked in the action space quite a bit. And you know, I've done a lot of research and I've been working on projects that embrace people who are tortured or exploring what that is. Television can be quite corporatized. There's a pecking order and a process, and so many layers that it can take away some of the true creative spirit. I was interested in the human journey, the conundrum of when the right and wrong of both sides get murky. You have to make some very strong choices that you'll have to live with. I took my Canadian perspective over to Ireland and dug around. And I found a very interesting story and brought it back. I think, as Canadians, that's just as important as our peacekeeping service. We go out and find these stories that other people are not willing to tell. Anthony Mackie is better at being Sam Wilson than I am. So I embrace his ideas. We need heroes who are relatable. We need heroes who are from this planet. At the end of Endgame, the shield was given to Sam and he said, "It feels like it's someone else's." That conversation, for me, was the most important conversation to have. A black man picking up the shield, what was that going to look like? There's no Marvel list. As a filmmaker, you are not only encouraged, but you are really supported to let your voice shine through. You have total freedom to push, scratch the surface, and try things. Character, story, and plot are affected by any action sequence, so you have to really design them accordingly. It's funny, because, yes, there's a Marvel aesthetic, and yet no one ever said to me, we have to do a Marvel aesthetic. So it was probably me more self-policing to make sure I was going to stay inside the box a little bit. I don't think there's ever a story the MCU tells that couldn't be expanded. They always leave it with some lovely doors that get opened. I think if Marvel called me to do anything, if they called me to film the phone book, I would do it. Grief is the great equalizer. It's small things like that, a pen, or being able to communicate freely, that we should always cherish. What's great about MCU, and certainly the marvel of it, everyone is unique. It's got its own DNA. I never felt it wasn't mine, but I was also very respectful of not knowing what I didn't know. Because the Marvel Cinematic Universe is very deep, and unless you live in it, you can't possibly know it all. I mean, I always just ignored the glass ceilings, and didn't let gender get in. my own way, which I think was very important to how people perceived me. The funny thing about being a female director in the last 25 years is that I never let it feel different. That's what storytelling is. It's excising the demons and taking a look at the hard subjects. In the US box office-driven industry, if you want to do a smaller personal film, you have to find your own financing. As a female, you're always terrified that if you blow it, you've blown it for your whole gender. When Captain America knocks at your door, you answer. The MCU, by definition, has quite a politically charged underpinning. The whole idea of Captain America was born of a time 80-something years ago. That was a time of the Second World War, and it was an anti-fascist idea. You had this idea of it being a soldier warrior. That was the construct for a hero. If we walk away thinking and having learned something, that as a filmmaker is what I set out to do. I've done a fair bit of work in the dramatic space researching extremism and how it operates, and it gets inside your head and how people get radicalized by it. It's a very slippery slope. And that's one of the joys of the MCU universe. It has so many different paths and lanes and stories, and they don't shy away from neither the controversial nor the emotional. I've always pushed the envelope when it comes to action. I hope that in another way we can move the need to say, instead of being a black director, or a woman director, or a French director, that I'm just a director. Because if a woman can only direct women, and men can only direct men, and black directors can only direct black actors, then we are missing out on opening up voices to different perspectives.